Dr. Sunil Wijesiriwardene, thank you very much for coming again to repeat the conversation that we had in Sinhala. Repeat meaning in the same framework, because
Yeah.
as I said, whatever subject I choose, I have it in Sinhala and English, because the overall aim of this channel is to help Sri Lankan learners who speak mostly in Sinhala listen to the same content in both languages, more or less the same content. So they are familiar with the content and can concentrate on the language, right? So
Okay, Madhu. Yeah.
one of the reasons that I invited you and actually activated the channel again is
Mm.
after having listened to you at a meeting recently. Now,
Okay.
I have known you since my childhood, and I was thinking actually it's because I was connected to the Kemadas Orchestra as a child, and you used to come and
Yeah,
see
yeah, yeah,
Kemadas's
yeah.
music. So I
Yeah.
had known you since a child, and then at
Mm.
Vivavi, and I've always admired your work. Um,
Mm.
and now recently we've connected again because you're in the Arts Council and I'm in the State Literary Panel. And recently you called us together, the Arts Council called us together to discuss what we should do or how we can help with the
Mm.
recent environmental calamity that occurred with the floods and many landslides. And there I listened to you speak about the environment, and I was thinking what you said should be heard by many others, because the environment is something that we do not normally pay attention in ordinary time. And
Yeah.
that, in fact, is a big mistake, because that's exactly where our attention and our focus should be going, because so many things are going wrong. We are acting in a way that harms the environment daily. And the
Yeah.
sooner we take this message outside, the better, because Sri Lanka is an island. We are surrounded by the sea, and there are crises like global warming happening, and a little bit of raise in the ocean levels can cause harm. And let's talk about it. And
Okay.
let me start, Dr. Vijay Sirivardana, by just checking what is your PhD on, because I only recently realized,
Mhm.
because I know you as a deep thinker, that it's actually connected to the earth, it's connected to agriculture.
Okay. Thank you, Madhu Bashini. Thank you very much for inviting me for this your conversation. Yes, there are two things. First thing is that your question. My PhD. I did the higher education, all that, about 10 years. I was in Moscow, uh, uh, some four decades back. And at that time, it was still Soviet Union. That state is no more now. Now has collapsed, the Soviet system. But I was studying in Moscow, and I was joined to I here in Sri Lanka. Um, I was, I passed my A levels and I could go to the medical college, but I didn't want to go to medical college. And then I got this scholarship, and in Moscow, I changed my, line, and I joined the agricultural faculty. First, I must also acknowledge that my English is much poorer than, of course, Sinhala and even than Russian. Right? Russian is much better. So your,
Since I
your
don't know Russian, we stick to English. And may I say, it's exactly, your English is perfect. And it's exactly that kind of thing that I am trying to find, because many of us, I mean, you're not included, many of the young people that I come across, I'm going to call you Sunilaya, it comes much more naturally to me.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Let's
many
have
of many of the young
it.
people I come across, it's not so much as a lack of knowledge, but the lack
Yeah.
of willingness to speak. So when people like you speak in English, I mean, of
Mm.
course, you're way too fluent, but I really am impressed when people who don't normally speak in English come and speak in English, because then we show that really you can communicate and
Of
beautifully.
course.
But somehow we have put that thing in front of us that says we are not kind of good enough. I'm just saying you're so excellent. I mean, I'm worried about my English when I speak with you. But let's
Okay.
continue. Right.
Thank you. So in Moscow, actually, I came across some names like Vernadsky, and I had a subject called ecology, right? In early years. So I was very much into this ecological systems and thinking. And Vernadsky is the great scientist. He died in 1920s. Anyway, now in my short speech at the Arts Council, you remember that I was talking about the our crisis. After the Ditwa, we experienced floods, landslides, droughts, and we used to here in Sri Lanka for the last decades. And new cyclone like Ditwa, scientists tell us that South Asia will face more frequent and more intense cyclones in the future. So that warning is there. And so since we'll be focusing on ecological crisis, but really I want to tell you and I want to share with you my way of understanding. You can't separate the ecological crisis with other facets of our crisis. So we know that at the same time, many young people feel anxious, not only about the climate, but also about jobs, social conflicts, meaning, and the future. So today I would like to explore one basic question with all of you, with you. Are all these crises connected? Are all, uh, and if they're connected, what kind of thinking do we need to respond to them? We have been failing all the time. Last many decades, we have been failing in many ways. It's related to our modern system of thinking. We can come to that. So the first question maybe which I was talking about that in council. Why are cyclones, floods, and landslides becoming more frequent? Can this be linked to, well, I'll come with that term. It's Anthropocene. I'll explain later. It's major concept that is, you remember that this book, right? I have been explaining all this issue with Anthropocene. Uh, anyway, uh, our crisis is connected to the Anthropocene. I'll explain later. From a scientific point of view, the explanation is very quite simple. Now, human activities such as burning fossil fuels, cutting forests, and polluting air and water have warmed the earth, right? Warm oceans give more energy to cyclones. Changes in rainfall pattern increase floods and landslides. So these disasters are not random, but there is a deeper point. These are not only natural disasters, they are also human-made disasters, or at least human amplified disasters. They reflect the way modern society treats nature. We have to discuss that uh, perhaps later as something to use, control, and conquest. This is the major idea, conquer. Uh, this brings us to the idea of Anthropocene. Right? This is the problem, Anthropocene. It's not a problem. We have come to that point, what does that mean? The term Anthropocene means, in very simple terms, it's the age of humans. Right? It is a term used to describe a new phase in Earth's history where human activity has become the strongest, force shaping the planet. We have become a geological force, right? In the past, natural forces, volcanoes, ice ages, earthquakes, shaped the earth most. Today, we humans begin to, we change the climate, we destroy forests, we pollute oceans, we cause many species to disappear. So the Anthropocene tells us something very important. Problem of the planet are deeply connected to the way humans we think, live, produce, and consume. And our systems of our way of looking at the whole, the universe, our world, our planet, how we look at our own, being. So this is the main first, thing I would like to share here. So we can continue now. We can come up with other questions. Um, we'll come to, I mean, civilizational crisis, but it's later,
Yes.
right?
To
Yeah,
one of the things that struck me when you spoke and when I read your the book here, I've concentrated mainly on the first article,
yeah,
is that some of these terms might be familiar, especially in the Western academia, like eco-criticism,
yeah,
because
yeah,
you mentioned Barry and his, beginning
yeah,
theory. There is now, like, we have very well-known theories like Marxist theories, feminist theories,
yeah.
post-structuralism, and all that. And something that has come recently is, not so recently now, but 2 decades ago,
About
is
yeah,
eco-criticism,
yeah,
where we look at, yes, where we look at literature through the eyes of the environment or the earth.
yeah,
And since then, and I realized in your first article, you have positioned the romantics very
mm,
centrally as
yeah,
those who resist the the trajectory of modernism. And let's get back to the point of modernism,
mm,
Sunilaya, where you have said the modern age. You
yeah,
have mentioned two revolutions as
yeah,
causing that. And one is the French Revolution, which you said started the feelings of freedom, and it's a political thing. And the next one is the Industrial Revolution, which actually started what we called the dependence on science and the radical discontinuity between the human and and the uh, the environment. So shall we just go back to the modernity
yeah,
first?
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, our modernity, it's actually known modernity, right? We don't know other modern. There could have been other types of modernity, but the way the modernity that we know grew out of two major revolutions, as we have been talking. That's industrial revolution. It gave us science, technology, and the material progress, how we know it, right? Then the French Revolution gave us ideas of freedom, equality, justice. Actually, uh, both brought many good things, right? But the Industrial Revolution was based on a particular way of thinking, influenced by Rene Descartes. Right? In very simple terms, Cartesian thinking divides reality into two parts: right? Mind versus body, humans versus nature, subject versus object. So the holistic approach of the way of thinking has been lost at the outset of modernity. It started with the mechanistic sciences. Nature became something outside us, due to this Cartesian idea, something to be measured, controlled, and used.
Even
This
in
way
the
of
West, Dr. Sunilaya, even in the West, did they? I know, like, for example, in the American continent, the indigenous people never had that dichotomy between nature and themselves. But the
yes,
West, Europe per se, did they ever believe in a whole? Because I know the Eastern cultures did. For
yeah,
example, our Buddhist culture did, the Eastern, the Vedanta, the Brahman did,
yeah.
of everything being one. Did the Europeans did it take science and the Enlightenment and the Cartesian thinking for this dichotomy to happen? Were they always thinking in two radically different ways about the nature and themselves?
No, you see, it's well, there has been a stream, very, I would say, weak stream in European society, but there has been a stream of different thinking. In our region, that major thinking has been this the idea of interconnectedness and this holistic
Yes,
idea. But
yes.
in this has been discussed by uh, I don't have that book here. I don't know whether you have come across the uh, she died recently, Joanna Macy, right? She's an American ecologist, feminist, and Buddhist, right? She has written a very interesting book. Mm, It's called Buddhist causal theory and general systems theory. So there she discussed how the Europe actually lost its early possibilities, of looking the whole thing in a different manner. There has been some streams. It has been suppressed somewhere in the, Greek, among, uh, before Aristotle, there has been other kind of, philosophers who has been looking at the world very close to the, I won't say the Buddhist idea, but close to that Buddhist systems. But it has been uh, lost in the, uh, in the course of history. But but later, these streams have been very, 2 decades back, these streams has been enlivened and again tapped, to come up with a new causal theory. It's called general systems theory. It's very close to the Paticcasamuppada, right? The dependent co-origination, the Buddhist way of understanding the world.
The
So actually,
general systems theory actually means that everything is interconnected, right?
yes, yes,
Biology, mathematics,
yeah,
science,
yeah,
the
everything.
machines,
Yeah,
everything. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so it's very unfortunately we have lost this way of understanding. So we want to do Professor Marasinghe, M.J. Marasinghe has written about this, that in the Buddhaghosa's time, the Thero's time, uh, this foundation has been derailed from our discourse, Buddhist discourse, and now, unfortunately, when we even our bhikkhus, when they talk about Hetupala Dharma, that is causal theory, they mean the modern linear unidirected system, not the this this idea of interconnectedness. That we are living within an interconnected world. That is that way of thinking, that way of seeing has been lost. So it's really unfortunate. Now we have to really tap this knowledge back, the wisdom back, and bring it to our work. Right?
One of the problems that I feel we have is that when we actually try, we have embraced Western modernity
Yeah,
so completely,
yeah,
right? And it has come through science. I mean, of course, there's so much good that we have with that, but
yeah,
we have embraced it so completely that we might actually consider our own ancient beliefs and beliefs that talked about everything being one as a backward step, as going back into a pre-modern era, as if that's, naturally
yeah,
something wrong. And that kind of thinking, I think, is it connected to colonialist thinking where we take
yeah,
anything that comes from the centers without question? Like, why have we lost the faith in what the Eastern systems of belief, where there was not such earlier, not such dichotomy? One of the best examples is that, again, if I may go to Buddhism, because that's a religion I know, the first thing Lord Buddha after enlightenment did was to sit and pay thanks to the tree by
yeah,
staring at it for a week. And,
yeah,
and we have the Muchalinda Naga, the snake god coming to say thank you,
yeah,
right, by covering him. So we always had this very comforting,
yeah. Connection
non-threatening
with the
link,
yeah,
non-threatening link to the
mm,
environment. And
yeah,
in your book here, you actually talk about the kavi that we tell before we burn a forest down for cultivation.
mm.
And why do we consider those things backward and non-scientific now? Like, are we so enamored by modernity that we have forgotten there's another system of knowledge we are inheritors of?
Yeah. Let's first look at, yes, it's very important question. Now, first look at the the problem of the modern science, right? Well, as we have been telling you, it has given us a lot, but there's a inbuilt um, issue with the modern science. Modern science cannot um, grasp the world in holistic manner. It has to break things into parts, right? So that is the way how modern science is trying to understand the world. It has to break things into parts, and we have been training, we have been training our mind within that system. We in schools, we study subjects, right? So what are these subjects? These are those parts, broken parts from a whole, the full system. And the issue is there are no parts in the world. It's one interconnected holistic system. So how we caught up, in this mess? As you say, it's not just, and it's very important. It's not just the colonial system. Colonial system has really given us this education and the system of governing the structures. So, well, it also brought, as we have been telling, it also brought the enlightening part from the French Revolution, justice and human dignity, all that is very good, right? But also the structures were um, aligned with the way of understanding the world through the modernist scientific lens. So my uh, our way of understanding is that not only colonial system, we easily uh, accepted the colonial system in a sense, the sciences and even the worldview, because we had this, the early, some 400, 500 years in our history, we were very deeply engulfed in a very dark feudal age where our systems have been, we were looking at the other not as a human being through the lens of casteism, caste and that kind of social structures, social divisions have been working within our our world, in our region, in our country. So post-colonial systems comes easily from that feudal uh, uh, system. We accepted because we were okay with the
Unquestioning acceptance of power,
accept of
which
power,
which are linked, right,
of hierarchy special, right? So
which are
that
linking
hierarchy,
to our own systems of feudal governance, right?
yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah. And unfortunately, our Buddhism now, Buddha has been challenging in his times of this divisions. The caste system is a major issue that Buddha has been, dismantling in both ways, theoretically and practically. But our Buddhism at some point began to kneel down in front of the feudal system, not challenging. It cooperated with the whole thing, right? So, so that's very really unfortunate, being all
Yes,
this.
I was looking at your comment about the division of knowledge into disciplines. And in Sri Lanka, and I think in many other places as well, the division occurs very early, like after O levels. Maybe they are
Yeah,
about 16 or something during that, because then we have mathematics streams, science streams, humanities, and that, and then they go on till the end of their life within their own streams and have no contact with other ways of thinking. And I think this
yeah,
can be very harmful sometimes, because scientists may not know what eco-criticism or, I mean, the doctors, I mean, of course, they'll have an idea, but the dichotomy is quite harmful. And I often think in my work in the university that sometimes other faculties need to have at least one stream from the humanities that deal with the human as a whole, because I think
yeah.
we technically are the closest to deal with that. Like I know Colombo Medical Faculty, for example, has a humanitas program
Hmm.
with Professor Carlo Fonseca first having that idea, and now people like Dr. Santusha Fernando carrying it forward, where they discuss poetry, being human, and all that within the medical faculty. So this kind of separation, could that be the reason that we have actually taken this long to realize as a country and maybe even globally why what you call eco
Yeah.
consciousness,
Hmm.
right, has not really affected the way we think, the way we act, the way we live? And now what are we to do? Let's just get to some terms. Sunilaya, like
Yeah,
And here you use things like ecology,
yeah,
right? You first, if you go back to the basics, is ecology different from environment? And if I say ecological studies, is it different from the environmental studies or parisarya that we learnt in school?
yeah. In schools, we have this Parisara idea and Parisara Veda, Parisara studies, the environmental studies. That term, unfortunately, gives the idea that Parisara is something outside us. The environment's there. That the natural environment, social environment, whatever environment is outside that. We are not a part of that. We are not included in the environment. But ecology term, the eco is oikom, that it's a Greek term. It's about the house, the whole, house where we live. So ecology is about the uh, all the life systems which is related to the earth system. So earth is also, in a sense, is a living entity, and it has all very complicated, very complex uh, systems related to this life, living thing, and biological life, that is living systems, are interconnected with the whole earth systems. It's
Including humans.
including humans. So we are within that, right? So that gives another, lens, eye, ecology. We have to start that we are part of the whole this system. But unfortunately, our school environmental kind of thing always it's the we we relate to something outside through this way of
Yeah,
learning. Yeah,
right. I was thinking now, if we were to address those issues, if we were to bring back this kind of knowledge, right?
yeah,
Given the ubiquitous systems that require profit, or our corporations or way of thinking, for example, take real estate, right?
yeah, yeah,
If you take even our mountains,
yeah.
I can imagine the amount of money that
Mm.
can be generated by opening it out to maybe a hotel and the tourists who come. And you see the corporate world and real estate, will they ever consider why a forest should not be cut? Is that kind of consciousness enough to challenge what I would say the capitalist machine? This
Mm.
kind of thinking, would that be enough, or are we caught within a huge machine that actually suppresses knowledge or the facts of truth, right, for profit in this world we are living now? What do you think?
Yes, Madhu, actually it comes from that blindness, that this everything is interconnected, and we are living in an interconnected world. That idea is very important to understand. Otherwise, we think that since everything is parts and separated things, we think we can uh, do this. The uh, prevailing development idea doesn't care for the other parts of the reality. So we think that since this is separate, we can do anything. We can, I mean, for the development, the way that how we understand now development, we can exploit the earth. We can do anything to the natural resources without any consequences. But it is not so, because let me share with you an idea. It's a major kind of way of understanding. My understanding is very important here. Then we can come to a better way of understanding this blindness. I approach this crisis, the big crisis, using systems thinking and Buddhist thought, as we have. I told that especially the idea of Paticamuppada, they both tell us the simple truth.
That's
Everything is connected.
dependent origination, right?
Yeah.
Paticca
So yeah,
Samuppada,
yeah.
dependent
That
origination.
yeah.
Okay.
It's actually the Buddha was telling that all the dharmas, that is all the phenomena, rise together and they are interconnected. Dependent. They depend on each other. Co-arise. So you can't separate any dharma from the system. Now, from that point of view, that from that approach perspective, I this is sort of my I would say discovery. The human life is shaped by three fundamental relationships. Right? Our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with the other human beings, and our relationship with nature. These are you know this three form a triad which is interconnected. So we have to very clearly understand this. The relationships are interconnected, right? So if one is damaged, the others also affected. We can't we can't think of our relationship with the human beings, our economics, our politics, taken separate from our spirituality and with the our relationship with the nature, right? We see today all these three relationships are in a trouble, in crisis. We see moral and spiritual crisis within individuals, right? And we see social, economic, political crisis between people. This is how we understand our politics, understand our economics. It's related to that relationship. And we see an ecological crisis in our relationship with the nature. So the ecological crisis also is not separate, right? It's a part of a much larger civilizational breakdown. So from here that I, come to the situational conclusion that, say, to answer a question like why are modern liberation movements not enough to solve the crisis? Right? This is why we think that we can, uh, go forward with this type of development idea and succeed. We can't. About 200 years or so, it seems that the Europe and especially the America was gaining, but they are now in a crisis. It's we have come to the limit, come to the edge. Now, modern liberation movements such as say Marxism, socialism, feminism, post-colonial theories have made very important contributions, of course. Right? They have helped us to understand injustice, power, inequality, exploitation. But when you look at the triad, when I look at these three relationships are interconnected, you see that most of these movements focus mainly on one relationship, right? Our social relationship, that relationship between human beings. That's very important, but you can't take separately and try to cure that, heal that. We often then the modern the way of understanding often ignore the other two dimensions, our relationship with nature and our inner life, mainly the meaning, values, spirituality.
Would
Because
the
of
inner
this,
would the inner life be the area for religion, you think?
yeah, it's very tricky, tricky issues. Well, you know, there's now we say Buddha or even the Jesus, they have discovered very deep, important spiritual realities about this, our inner world and also these systems, right? How we relate to others, all that. The religion sometimes, look base seems, based on that, but true when the religions are actually made by us, by the society. So through the history, when the religions go that discovers went through the history by taken by people, they sometimes began to begin to distort this early spiritual discoveries, and religion can come. I mean, it can become a totally distorted system. But
And then it can come
un-
to the second tier, human and society also. Yeah.
yeah, it can become part of the question also. Now, but
Yes.
within the religions, uh, if you smart enough, you can find that early seeds of wisdom, right? It has, through the history, then all that has been suppressed or, uh, restored.
Mm.
So, So actually now what we talking about is that you cannot heal one part of living system while ignoring the rest, right? So um, then we need to ask the question: what kind of thinking created this problem in the first place? We have already partly,
Answer that.
discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here we must look at the modern civilization, especially what is often called the Western modernity. Uh, if if we can connect with that prior, the key problem is the idea of conquest. Modern civilization imagine progress as a conquest of nature, conquest of other peoples. If you know, try to understand the American history, modern history, you see clearly this problem. The idea was there to conquer the nature and conquer the peoples and wipe them out and control and domination in both
And
ways.
in fact, you said billions of people were wiped out in the
Yes,
indigenous, the tribes in
yeah,
America. And you also said their ways of belief, their ways of living were very, very different. And they didn't have a duality between nature and
yeah.
themselves. And this whole races were wiped out when these countries were established. Okay. Yes.
Yes, that those people, that tribes, there were more than 500 tribes and very advanced, in not our modern sense, but in spiritual and social sense, advanced tribes, uh, and they were looking at the nature as a sacred thing. All the nature has been. They were worshipping in a sense. They were very grateful to the nature. That is the point. They were grateful to the whole world, the earth, the water, the grass, the fauna and flora in many deep way. So they were looking at themselves as a part of that whole uh, natural system. So they couldn't think, taken, their mind taken separately. No, they couldn't think that way too. Not, they didn't know still Descartes, so they didn't have the problem. You see. Uh,
Now that we are here, that now we are in a state of crisis, as you said, the Anthropocene age is here, where
yeah,
humans seem to control almost everything. And it's incredible the time span that we managed to affect the planet. There were billions of years before humans or even animals were created on Earth, and then billions of years before the human as a man or a woman came to being, and then within a short span we have impacted everything enough to put the whole planet in danger. Right now
yeah,
that we are here, though, is there any way we can reverse the process? Or let's take Sri Lanka first. Now we know we just saw a calamity which was very surprising
mm,
because it was unexpected, and like stability in the mountains are suddenly questionable now, and that's a very hard feeling to handle. What do we
yeah,
do now? Like, what are the methods we should be looking at now to change uh, effectively, you think?
yeah. It's very in simple terms. What we need is a consciousness shift. There's no other way. Macro shift of our consciousness, our way of looking at the world. We have seen that triad, and to understand the world as this interconnected relationships and all that. So how we do that, Madhu, I have a concept called, hmm, I call it, uh, uh, site of cultural power, sites of cultural power. So what are those sites of cultural power? The the culture also in my language is not just the rituals or tradition or whatever. It's all our behavior and the foundations of our behavior and all that, the material and immaterial uh, culture. So the sites of culture power means what are the areas of our human world that have the utmost effect on our consciousness, that forms our consciousness, collective and social consciousness, collective consciousness. Then you will find that there are four uh, big sites or major areas that have the power to impact on or make our consciousness. Right? This is education. The teachers have, you know, the utmost power. Even the parents have that power because they are teachers in that sense. And then artists have this power. Religious leaders have this power to touch the minds and hearts of people. And whatever, unfortunately, the media has this power. So these are the four areas: the education, arts, then uh, religion, and uh, media. Right? Now look at our scenario, our situation. All these four areas: the education, media, arts, and religion, in a sense, are also in a crisis. They're sick. They're not healthy. Our education is not. Now we have already discussed that. It is based on the modern scientific way of looking at, and we are learning subjects. We produce
Variety. Mm.
Yeah, we produce doctors without heart. I'm not talking about all the doctors. They have a different background, but the education doesn't produce the heart, right? And we know, we can ask this simple question: are our teachers, real, true teachers? Are our doctors true doctors? Our politicians true politicians? And finally, our students true students. You come to a, well, bad answer, right? Not very encouraging answer. So we have a problem, right? So I think these four areas should have a reform movements. But who can do that? That can be in some other countries. The people within those, who are responsible for those areas, has to uh, start this new discourses, new movement, new practices, education now. Say, I mean, there's a long history now in Denmark and in those countries, right? There's been a movement by teachers, right? 100 years back, there was this uh, what is called that folk school system or high folk school system. That is, people were sitting together at the grassroots in their villages, in their communities, and they were starting to discuss, about their life. So these structures were later institutionalized, and they are there. So there's a practice, people come together, sit together, and discuss. Who, were talking about come together and produce something in a journal or whatever way to discuss about pedagogy, our meanings of our education, how it should be, all that has not been there. And with regard to the artists, unfortunately, we are poor. We don't have money. We don't have capital, to come up. I mean, we don't have public funds. This is the problem for us. We have only commercial capital. So we need to empower our artists to let them, work uh, according to their conscience and produce some good art. And that these are very important, very powerful arts. Uh, Arts can impact in huge way our minds.
In fact,
As,
one part of this series will actually speak to some artists, as you
yeah,
say, in private capacities, who's
yeah,
who painting or literature who speak about this. But
yeah.
as you're right, there's no public funding for that kind of national initiative to happen. There are more private enterprises or whatever, private efforts to get the message across through art, but perhaps not enough. Right.
Yeah, this is also part of our problem. We haven't seen that arts And culture is important, for our life. We are looking at the economics and that part, science, and but we don't see it again that the humanities is not very. We don't see that as important. There have been sometimes we had some ministers, education ministers, who were questioning why we produce this much of artists or even dancers, why we can't give jobs, you know.
කලාව
Now
කන්නද නේද මොකක්ද
කලාව
ඒක?
කණ්ඩද මොකටද
ඔව්.
මෙච්චර නැට්ටුව හදලා and now that is a way of understanding. It's a very limited way of understanding. Now imagine in Madhu, if our, say, even the women who are not going to work, there are some 100,000 women, if they suddenly understands that I want to learn dance, not as to make, a dance in public, but it's good for me. It's about self-development. I want to learn some, visual arts because it's good for me. We don't have that idea. But if people get into that idea, how many dance teachers or other teachers will need, So it's about demand. We have not been thinking that way, that these are
I think
simple things.
right. I think also, as you said, it's very much connected to money, economics
It's very,
finally.
yeah,
Because if you
it's,
take
yeah,
Japan, we discussed Japan when we spoke in Sinhala.
yeah,
Japan, even in Tokyo, because I happen to visit it, they have forests and gardens
yeah,
within Tokyo itself with that kind of population. Because, and I was very interested to read in your book, you say Japan is one developed nation that follows a different trajectory with regard to nature. And you had connected it with the Shinto religion that they have, along with Buddhism.
yeah,
Speak a
yeah.
little bit about that religion, Dr. Wijesiriwardene.
Yes, actually, Japan is a very interesting example. We could follow that way of understanding the world. Japanese actually they for many 100 years. Um, when it comes through their haiku, through their paintings, visual arts, there's a very interesting connection with the nature. So in Japanese Buddhism, right, so we have this notion, right, that everything is, well, anitta, anicca. How do you call it in English? Impermanent, right?
Impermanence,
Now, yeah,
transience,
transient, yeah,
impermanence. Hmm.
yes. Now Japanese also understand, and because of that, they value this movement. They don't think that it is not now the sakura, the flowers when they bloom, they just go and uh, enjoy that. Because they know it's very impermanent, transient, impermanent phenomenon. So they much more, this impermanence is not seen as something to leave that beauty, to grasp it in fullest manner. So we we were thinking the other way, it's because of impermanent we don't need that, So not that way. The Japanese have been thinking about the natural phenomena as very important. The beauty is it's seen as part of our spirituality, and it's very true.
Yes, and also if you look at the anime, they
Yeah,
consider inanimate stuff like even a river could have a spirit, right?
yeah,
And you have actual characters who
yeah,
suddenly remember their past of being a river. So this
yeah.
amazing thing.
Shinto is precisely about that. No, they see the everything is animated. They are living entities. The mountains, the trees, and the water. Uh, they 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 think them as they always as sacred entities that you
Yes.
can have a very respectful relationship with these entities, mountains and trees and all that.
Right. And our first ancestors actually worshipped, the sun and all that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
right, somehow we have pushed that back into backwardness and stupidity and all
Yeah,
that.
unfortunately, we begin to think that this is from the modern
Modernity is everything.
scientific
That's
and
the
modern
thing. Yes,
erase
like,
all that these are foolish things. Why we unit? Yeah, that's really unfortunate. That
right.
the the sense of gratitude. To understand the world that this. the earth, the trees, they give us, the sun. So we should be grateful to the whole natural systems. We are part of that, and we are here because of all the other beings, other things, not beings, other beings,
Right. Before we
other
end,
beings
I
in the
just
sense
want
even the
to
water. Yeah, yeah.
before we end, I want to also touch upon this in with what you said about gratefulness and all that. Um, there is this, like you talk about ether here, and there's
Yes,
this
yeah,
feeling, yeah, that every inanimate thing can be alive or has a vibration, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I have seen that in some spiritual writing done in the East, but the West has also coming to terms with something called quantum physics, where
yeah,
not everything is clearly explainable by the laws of physics as we know them now, right? So, is something going to come together, or are we going to find a higher kind of
yeah.
physical, scientific explanation of what the East believes to be like this consciousness, like the Brahman that pervades
Mm.
the whole atmosphere? You think these two will ever meet, or is it two different things?
There are a lot of things, we can think about now, right now. At the outset of the modern science, we were talking about this. There was this Descartesian or the Cartesian idea. So, so the space, has was thought as an empty place. Space is empty. But early, there has been some kind of, notions, understanding that space is not empty. It's ether, it's full of something, full of some living energy. We could
Even a
say that.
consciousness, no? Intelligent
Exactly,
consciousness.
exactly. It's what's called sometimes akash and many, many terms. And it's the consciousness, the the major, we are part of that. The consciousness is all over there, right? All over the world, all over the space, all over the everything is conscious in that sense. Even a stone is conscious, and space is it's called sometimes psychosphere, right? Full of uh, conscious, right? Now, even now, this is we don't see that way now, but actually, according to the psychosphere idea, Madhu, when we think, we transmit thought energy, and the
The
whole space,
vibration.
yeah, it's full of that energies, thought energy, good or bad, whatever, right? And there are other ideas also that space is not empty; it's full of, and that I mean, deeply, it's a conscious area, a conscious space, right?
With
So,
frequencies attracting each
yeah,
other and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, from the new physics is uh, demolishing the early. I mean, Newtonian physics is okay for some area of our reality, but not the whole thing. So, this quantum physics coming into the scene is showing that well, there is something else, something which cannot be explained by the Newtonian physics, where you understood the space is empty and all that. That's now is totally being that idea shifted. It's a paradigmic shift in the modern science. It's
Let
coming.
yeah, let's hope, because I have also read that the brains that got a man in the moon is
Yeah,
actually being used just 10%. There's 90% of our brain that we don't know or we haven't developed to actually use it. So I was also thinking, we have heard tales about Irdi the
yes,
transportation
yes, yes.
and
So this
also
is that. Yeah, this is very interesting question. Now, the whole idea of development. We have thinking of the only material development. Actually, we mean by that only the physical growth. Actually, when you look at our own selves, and we have seen, or actually, not only believe, I mean, there was Buddha and many other masters, right, who had a different um, capacities. Totally very, I mean, they have been tapping some other energies, some other possibilities, capacities. And that means, actually, Buddha was telling at one point that I was. It's not something, it's about human capacity. Mama, uh, uh, Manusya Shakti and Manusya Dharyan, out of human capacities, I achieved this. So it's possible for everybody. So
Exactly. He
when we see,
emphasized the fact that he wasn't divine, that he was human.
no, he was not divine.
Yes.
It's about human capacities that has not been tapped yet by other people, by us. So there's a possibility that we learn to tap these energies, our hidden other possibilities, capacities. We have the chance. So human development can be then seen in a different light, not like just material, development or growth, but human development can be seen as to develop our human capacities. So perhaps there's no ending for that.
Exactly, but I just hope that people's mental capacity will arise before we
Yeah,
all wiped out of the planet Earth, because the belief now is on success being material, very
yeah,
much so. Like success defined as how many cars do you have, how many like houses do you have, shoes or whatever. So I'm reading a book, very interesting book called The Great Derangement by Amitav
yeah,
Ghosh, where he
yeah,
says one of the truths that we do not face, and we both spoke about it, there are truths we don't speak to live in this capitalist world,
yeah.
is that modernity actually allowed that lifestyle for a minority of people. Then the planet could have survived. But now everywhere, Asia included, which has the biggest population, everybody having two cars or trying to have two cars, whoever can afford it, right? Eventually the carbon, it's all about the burning of fossil fuels that make the greenhouse gases come and the global warming happens. So consumption is, we are begged to consume by every advertisement that comes in. Nobody's stopping that. Consumption drives corporations. Consumption drives the economy. So I can't even imagine seeing a halt in that, because to stop consumption would be to for the whole economic system to collapse. So this is the thing. There are some truths we have to be blind to make sure that people survive and get their paychecks at least till the whole planet is wiped off or whatever. So these conflicts, it's very difficult to reconcile. I mean, we can have an utopian idea of this is how things should be, but I doubt that without looking straight into the face of these facts. Like if you keep going on like this, I mean, you might be rich for this lifetime, but there may not be a planet for us to even mentally grow. How do you reconcile that? I mean, what can we do practically, globally? Is it possible to reconcile this?
No, we have to actually, now this is the main major challenge. Now you see that the planet, the Earth is in terms of resources, it's limited, right? All these billions of people cannot have the same, that two cars and all that, can't do that. So the thinkers like Irvin Laszlo he has this. So since we are in a big crisis, civilizational crisis, Laszlo uses the idea of bifurcation, right? In simple words, this means that it's the in our modern history and civilization, we have come to a point, is a turning point. When a system becomes too complex and too stressed, it cannot continue in the same way. It must either collapse totally, uh, come to collapse or transform itself. There's no other way. Either we destroy ourselves with the planet, or we have to change. We have to transform our whole way of understanding and way of living. So, so as you say, and as we say, this movement is very dangerous, right? Because we have the possibility of destroying ourselves, but it is full of possibility, and I mean, we are being forced to choose a new direction. There's no other way. So then we have to. I mean, there are countries where people started looking, I mean, thinking about that. In Scandinavian countries, most of them, and even Japan, in Korea, people. there's research, done by one Audrey and his wife, Sharon Anderson. They have found a new breed of people, who, uh, have been detached themselves from this American dream idea, this competition, this greed, right? They have chosen a different life, in simple, good life, but very simple, caring for each other, caring for nature. They are ready to, uh, spend on uh, ecological, revival, and it's very different. And they are very much into the spiritual seeking. So this is a new breed of people, and uh, Paul says whatever. I mean, America is the most problematic country, but they found there's about 25% of people have been, you know, um, started taking a different direction. So that is also an interesting thing. We have this possibility of taking another direction, and even now this conversation between two of us, right? And look at this deeply. We haven't this kind of conversation. Some say 10 years back, right? Now, if this is going to multiply, in every places, I think we are going to change that. It is the only way. We have to converse. We have to sit down and dialogue and find, and also, as you say, we change our practices, change our way of, living, our practices. Then it can come. There's a Buddhist. We don't have time, but there's a Buddhist uh, um, kind of parable we'll discuss in different another time. Uh, the Buddha himself has was telling, but there's a Tibetan parable. It's called that. I what the thing, but there's the it's comes to the point that we are going to destroy ourselves through because of the Mara forces. But then from the 10 directions, a new breed of people come with two weapons. Okay, they practice, they specialize with these two weapons, and they come from the 10 directions of the planet. They may be, black or white or men or women. And what are these two weapons? Wisdom and compassion. So they fight with these two weapons, and they change the whole direction of the human history. So that there are this kind of parables or forecasts, whatever, also.
Wisdom and compassion. Yes.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
hope, Dr. Wijesiriwardene, since we need to stop conversing and there's so much more to say. And I realize that when I speak with you, there's a lot of things we haven't discussed. But for the moment, we will end now
yeah,
because, as you say, at least a small conversation like this in a small channel, that's still way of getting stuff out, thinking out if they wish to listen. And apart from the elemental practical things that we should do, like grow more trees, stop cutting
yeah,
trees, Professor Laszlo's work, which you have summarized here, it's completely shocking, where he says there
yeah.
are acres of forest land being cut within a day, and 6,000 children die a day due to lack of drinking water. I mean,
Water,
these
yeah.
are statistics I had never even imagined. But it's happening now quietly. It took a disaster for us to see the problem in front of our eyes, because these are truths we refuse to look at um, when we live for the system to continue. So thank you very much for coming today, for sparing me your time to come and speak about these things, which I think are crucially important that we impart to everyone, ourselves, as well. So I'm very grateful for speaking to me in Sinhala and then in English in my channel. And I'm very honored to have had you here.
Thank you, Madhu. I think I'm really honored, and I'm very happy, that we could sit together and have this conversation. I think even in a small way, we have a conversation. Some your students will look at, but I think it's very important as an event. You know? These are in a small way. These are historic events, right? Well, in a small way,
Hopefully,
but
if the
yeah.
internet lives, it will last both of us. Oh, that's the idea.
Anyways, thank you so much. I'm so
Thank
grateful.
you very much.